Another thing that I learned from my lawyer was that they have a grapevine that we don't, us ordinary civilians don't have. And what I mean by that is they know when stuff's happening when we don't, before we do. Because they heard the noise about there would be criminal charges coming. So he began working with me. He began working with me to get me to see that it didn't really matter what I did or didn't do. Because after all, I had liquidity as a responsibility for the last year. I handled the liquidity. And what I did was keep the pirate ship afloat. What I began to realize from him beating on me, and when I say beating on me, the guy should have been a nun. If we were sitting at a table and talking about something, I would say to him, well, I didn't do that. Or I wasn't part of that. Then he'd pick up something and whack my knuckles. He'd punch me in the arm. If I was giving a presentation on the big chalkboard about what entities were supposed to be doing and how things were structured, and said something, well, I don't know what they really did, and Zoom would go or an eraser by or it marks a lot. That's how he beat me up. But what he had to do is he had to beat me into realizing that it wasn't a matter of if I was going to jail. I was already on my way. I mean, on my way. No two ways about it. I was on my way. It made me realize that I had a lot of questions I didn't have answers to. I didn't want this. I couldn't give it back. It wasn't right that I was in the position that I was in, but that didn't matter. I still had it. Still had to deal with it. He convinced me, in his own words, you have to cross the Rubicon. Because as the admin guy, I knew a little bit about everything, but not a whole lot about one thing. And by knowing a little bit about everything, it made me valuable to people like the FBI and to the task force. So what I did, after consultation with them and the FBI, is, in his words, I crossed the Rubicon. Of course, that's a saying that comes from Julius Caesar crossing a river in Italy in ancient times. But when I crossed and became a member of the other camp. And that's when I began researching. And that's why I began testifying. And as I researched, and I would sit in a room with boxes and boxes of loan files and deals that had been done and so forth that would ask me to make sense out of these and who else might have been involved. And as I would go through these things and look at them, I kept saying to myself, these don't make any sense. This shouldn't have been. Why would they do this? And the answer is because it was fraud. The answer is because they were packing the back ends of the loans to pay for the jets and the yachts and all these things. They had these draw items for the loan that didn't have anything to do with the purpose of the loan, at least on paper, but they had a way to find money to pay for the lifestyles. Is the way they worked it. As I went along testifying, I gathered hope. The chairman, though, at the institution, the SNL, he was a guy that only thought of himself. Narcissist 24/7. Good likeness here. This is the bandit. This is the pirate. This is the man who didn't care anything about the people that worked for him other than how he could use you, put you in some deal, piece of a deal, so that you wouldn't know all about it, but you would know a portion of it, so that you couldn't put it all together, so that he could continue to scheme and disguise, etc., etc. This went on for a long, long time and involved a whole lot of people. But the involvement of all those people, having worked at Vernon Savings, is when they left, they couldn't get a job because they had worked at Vernon Savings. No matter what they did, they still couldn't get a job if they had Vernon Savings on their resume. I still read the obits every day. He's still around. I'm patient. I know I'll outlive him. I did say I had hope. The hope that I had was because I began testifying. And the more I testified, the better I felt about all this. The better I felt that I was helping myself somehow in this way. And part of this, I was granted probation, 5-year probation. I'm going to say after the 14th year, I got a call from the FBI, the lead guy who had prosecuted my case, and he asked me to meet him at a restaurant in Bedford. I went, sat with him, and he said, I want you to know that I've been in touch with, and he told me the names, of course, the guys that I had worked with for a long time, 2 other FBI agents who had prosecuted my case, as well as a number of others, and the Department of Justice lawyers, same. He said, we're all in agreement. We want you to know that we should never have prosecuted you. It took me a minute to gather myself. But I did say, looks like you're buying lunch. He said, we want to encourage you to make application for a presidential pardon. We don't know much about it, but we'll try and support you. So I looked into it, called a couple of friends, talked it over with my wife, and it was going to be like Yogi Berra tells us, deja vu all over again. I was going to have to be investigated all over again. The pardon attorney's office has to start off another investigation. My wife wasn't real happy about any of this, you can imagine. For me, I finally decided to do it, typed it up, handwritten, sent it in, didn't use a lawyer, and they assigned to me a pardon attorney. My pardon attorney's name was Hope McGowan. And every year they'd pardon that turkey. And every year I'd call her up and say, Ms. McGowan, you still got my application? Is it still working? She'd say, yes, Mr. Smith, but can't tell you anything else. Nothing else we can tell you about it. This went on for, 6 or 7 years. And then one day I was in Littleton, Colorado. And the phone rang. And she said, Mr. Smith, this is Hope McGowan, pardon attorney's office. President Bush would like to wish you a Merry Christmas and grant you a presidential pardon. Just like that. Just like that. I'm asked, why do you do this? Why do you speak about this? Because you have to relive it every time you speak about it. Because if it can happen to me, it can happen to you. Or it can happen to someone that you know, someone that maybe a daughter or a son or a nephew or a niece or a brother or sister, someone who's changing jobs, someone who's looking for a job. This is a cruel world out there. You've got to be on your toes all the time. Integrity, you're only going to have one. You have to defend it. You have to protect it. And the ways to do this are you have to have your own back to start with. Don't think somebody else has. You got to have your own back. You have to have intuition and listen to it. You know, people will just call it your gut feel. Fine. It's what it is. You have to be aware. Have to have awareness. You have to have consciousness. No, you want to own consciousness. Consciousness is having or being aware of your own awareness. But these are the things that you have to do in order to protect your integrity. If it can happen to me, it can happen to you. We saw an earlier slide about God ethics. This helps to elaborate a little more about integrity. And you can see ethics are how you think. Virtues are what you do. Integrity is who you are. People know you for your integrity. It's an energy that you carry about you. And it's a respect that you have from people that know you because they know you to have this quality. We find so often, though, that there are many times that we don't confront the challenges to integrity. Maybe it be at the mall, the workplace, or at school. You know, we don't often enough stand up ourselves or have others say, well, wait a second, this isn't right. We shouldn't be doing this. Wait a second. You shouldn't be doing this here. Go take that somewhere else. I don't think we should do this. I don't think I should sign this. Those are the things that we don't see enough courage today of people involved with doing this. Truth. First test, the four-way test. Why? It's the most important. But truth has become something that we often have to kind of do this today as we listen to what we're told and then end up what we see are two different things. There's a huge gap now that we see, primarily from politicians with respect to this. Secondly, truth. It's kind of like Groucho once said, are you going to believe me or your own two eyes? And as you're thinking about that, we have to understand that it appears that politicians primarily, or other people in power, they have actually traded in their integrity to maintain the power, to keep their position. It's something that we have to watch, something we have to stay with. Let me borrow a little bit from Robbie Burns. Do not go into that night without having challenged those who have trouble with the truth, or those that wrap themselves in half-truths. They have to be challenged. We're the ones to do it, because we believe in integrity and that they ought to be challenged. This is going to solve a conflict. Conflict is baby boomers are becoming senior citizens. So we call them senior babies? No. Baby seniors? No. Retros. What are retros? Retros believe in things that we do. Retros believe in mentoring. Retros believe in the ability to offer people themselves to be able to provide solutions and answers to their questions. Retros retrofit. By placing your hand on your own community, you can do this. Can do. I'm a can do person. Can do people are those that are involved. You might say, well, I'm not part of that anymore. I'm too vulnerable. I don't want to get involved in that again. Nope. You can't opt out anymore. You got to re-engage. You got to get back on the field. No yelling from the sidelines. You got to get back on the field. We have an obligation. Our obligation is to help others, remind those what their destiny is, what they're here for, that right makes might, that there is a right way, there is a wrong way, that you can be a difference maker. So make a difference. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today.